Hi, it's Scott here from MoneyNerd, and in case you're new, we use insider knowledge to help people beat debt collectors and become debt-free. In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to deal with Arrow Global debt collectors. You've probably received a letter from Arrow Global or even had them knocking at your door. When I had debt collectors chasing me back in 2010, it caused me a lot of stress and anxiety and plenty of sleepless nights. But since then, I've worked in the credit card industry for over 10 years, and I'm happy to say that I've been able to use my insider knowledge to help thousands of people out of debt. So today I'd like to share you my knowledge by answering 5 frequently asked questions, like are Arrow Global even legitimate? How to reduce your repayment amount? How to stop Arrow Global from contacting you? What happens if you ignore them? And what they're not allowed to do when they're collecting your debt. At the end of this video, I have a bonus tip on how to potentially write off some of your debt, so stick around to the end. Okay, so question number 1, are Arrow Global legitimate? If you've received a letter in the post from them, this is probably your first question. If you don't recognize the company name, Arrow Global, it might be that they've purchased your debt or that they're a debt collector collecting on behalf of another company. I can confirm that Arrow Global is a UK registered company, and whilst there are a bunch of scams out there when it comes to debt collectors, I'm afraid this is unlikely to be a scam. However, you should never pay unless you are certain that the debt is yours. You're well within your rights to ask Arrow Global to provide proof that the debt is yours, and I have a free letter template that you can use to confirm that the debt is yours and how much you owe. It's totally free, and I'll link it in the description. Okay, question number 2. What happens if you ignore Arrow Global? Well, if you ignore debt collectors, your problem could escalate and become very serious. Arrow Global does have the right to take court action against you, and if you were to ignore court action or ignore those court letters, you could end up with a county court judgment, or what you might recognize as a CCJ. This could have a major impact on your credit score and your chances of borrowing money in the future. If you do get a CCJ and you still don't pay, this could ultimately result in bailiffs coming to your home and to take your valuable items or even your car. So please, please, please don't ignore them, and we'll get to what you should do later in this video. Okay, question number 3. What Arrow Global are not allowed to do? Well, despite being legally appointed to collect your debt or outright owning your debt, there are several things Arrow Global cannot do when it comes to collecting debts. Knowing what Arrow Global can and can't do will make you feel a lot more comfortable and confident when dealing with them. So here's the things they're legally not allowed to do. They're not allowed to visit your place of work without you giving them specific permission to do so. Before this rule was put in place, some debt collectors would show up while you're working and try and make things awkward for you as a way of pressuring you into paying. And on a similar note, they're not allowed to speak to neighbours, friends, or family about your debt. Again, this is to stop them trying to embarrass you or shame you into paying your debt. Arrow Global can't contact you or visit your home at unreasonable times of the day. For phone calls, most people would agree that calls before 8 a.m. are too early and calls after 9 p.m. are too late. But your circumstances might be different. For example, if you work night shifts. If you can't take calls during certain times, then tell them. They should keep a record of this and avoid calling you during these times. You can make a complaint if they keep calling at times you told them to avoid. They're not allowed to act in a threatening or intimidating way. Also, they should never pressurize you into paying larger installments than you can afford or hitting payment deadlines that are impossible. The regulations say that they're not allowed to pressure you into selling your home or to take out more credit to pay your debts. Debt collectors can't pretend to be bailiffs or enforcement agents. Unlike bailiffs, debt collectors can't force their way into your home, and they can't refuse to leave if you ask them to do so. And they're certainly not allowed to take your belongings or clamp your car. Okay, question number 4. How long can you be chased for debt? Well, under the Limitation Act of 1980, a creditor has 6 years to chase most unsecured unpaid debts, or 12 years for some mortgage debts. This limitation period starts from the time of your last payment or when you last acknowledged the debt. Ultimately, debt collectors cannot enforce their debts through the courts after 6 years. But if you've already been taken to court and have a CCJ registered against you, then there's no end date. Okay, last question, then I have a bonus tip on how to potentially write off some of your debt. Question 5, how do I pay less and come to an agreement with Arrow Global? Well, there's a number of ways you might be able to reduce the amount you pay. If Arrow Global are already adding interest and charges to your debts, then you could ask them to freeze that to help you get back on track and clear your debts quicker. Debt collectors are more likely to stop or reduce interest and charges if you can prove that you're in financial difficulties. I would suggest you put together a budget showing your income and your essential living costs so you can clearly demonstrate that you're in financial difficulties. You can also use that budget to negotiate reduced payments. Again, for this, you'll need to show why you can't afford higher repayments. So use that budget to write down your income and your essential living costs so you can demonstrate exactly what you can afford. Sometimes debt collectors will only agree to reducing payments for a set period of time, and at the end of this period, they'll want an update on your situation. Other times, they'll agree to a much longer repayment time, but all of this will totally depend on the nature of your debt and your individual circumstances. If you have the cash, you could make a full and final settlement offer. This is where you ask if they'll take a lump sum instead of the full balance, and in return for having that lump sum, some debt collectors will agree to write off the remainder of the remaining debt. And as promised, here's my bonus tip on how you might be able to write off some debt. And it's not just with Arrow Global, by the way. If you have debts with other people, there's lots of ways you can significantly reduce your repayments and even write off some of your debt. During my career in the credit card industry, I discovered that there are 7 relatively unheard of debt solutions that are available in the UK. The industry doesn't really advertise many of these, as most of them are free or low cost. Now, unfortunately, these solutions are not available to everybody. You do need to be in specific circumstances, but there's probably at least one of these 7 solutions that you do qualify for. You could either be paying less than you do already, or even write off some of your debt. To make it simple for you, I've created a free eligibility checker, which I've linked to in the description below. It's 5 simple questions, multiple choice. It takes less than 30 seconds to do, and you can find out if you can reduce your repayments and write off some of your debt. So click the link in the description below and go and do that now.